How well does Cubicasa work? This is Glenn Kangas with GA Appraisals in Southern California, and today I'm going to do a test on Cubicasa to see how well it handles A, measuring something with angles and proper square footage, and B, I'll show you something in a second here, calculating what part is living area and what part is not. So let me just take and show you real quick here what situation we've got, then we'll do a test. Number one, we have some angles here already. Right, so there's going to be angles. I of course have my angle measurer that I use. Digital ones are fine too. And then if you keep coming over here, from the outside it looks like this is part of the house. You can see there's more angles here. It goes down at an angle down the wall there. But if you follow me through into here, we find out that this is not part of the house over here on my right. That this is actually a guest house or an ADU or something like that. So we're going to see how it calculates that, the way that angle is. And then if you come here in the back, we're going to see more angles here. And even when you get over to that far side, there's angles there. So I'm going to do the test on this just to see how well Cubicasa does versus my measurements. I typically am very precise on my measurements using the angles to try to make sure I get it right. So we look forward. I'll have added to this video, we'll do a video on the computer showing the difference between my measurements and Cubicasa's measurements and talk about the benefits of using Cubicasa and the potential drawbacks that you have to watch out for. Okay, so now we get to look here and see the comparison between my measurements, which I was very precise on, to make sure that I was as accurate as possible, and Cubicasa. So you can see there's lots of angles here, and the guest quarters is separate, as we talked about. Now this is the first image that came from Cubicasa, and the one thing it did incorrectly was it counted the guest quarters as living area, so its calculations show up as 2,322 square feet, which is not accurate. Remember, I got 1,582. But if you're using Cubicasa, you can, when you're in it, these areas, you mark them as not contiguous. You remove the contiguous check, and it will change it. So by doing that, this became non-contiguous area. So now it got 1611, so very, very close to my 1582. The one thing I've noticed is that it does tend to make the walls the measurements a little bit bigger than what I measure. So again, I'm very precise. I'd measure to the nearest tenth of a foot, and it tends to have measurements that are just slightly longer than mine, which is where I think the calculation comes a tiny bit high. And the only other drawback to this is now by calling this non-contiguous area, you don't get a measurement for that particular area. You actually have to add up all these non-living area ones that are specific to that to get what I got was 652 square feet for the guest house. So anyway, Cubicasa actually works really well. It handles angles pretty well. It does have a few minor things where it seems to have the measurements a little longer than they actually are in a few cases, but outside of that, it's actually pretty good, and I do recommend it, especially for if you want a bigger properties that would take a long time to measure or that are complex. As long as you properly define the areas as contiguous and things like that, you can get a fairly accurate measurement. It's not ANSI compliant, but it certainly counts if you've got a different, non-Fannie Mae lender, a big, high-end property jumbo lender that's not a Fannie Mae loan. I do highly recommend Cubicasa for those situations because the time it saves you, it makes it worth the cost on a high fee file on a big property. So that's the comparison of Cubicasa on this one property that I did. I got 1582. It got 1611. So again, those are basically in agreement as far as that goes.